Love the Roller Coaster, I talk about three mindsets people live in when life changes. The poverty mindset is where things are happening to you and you question why me? You look for meaning in the pain and you feel like you're kind of stuck inside the circumstances. The survival mindset is where you push forward. You take on more, you handle it. I can do this. I got this. And you become the person that other people start depending on. You start carrying other people's stuff. And then there is the creator mindset. That is where you step back, reassess, and begin to rebuild with intention. What surprised me in this conversation with Kit is how survival showed up in a way that of us would not recognize or even question. It looked like strength. It looked like being capable, dependable, and always stepping in to carry other people. But that version of survival can keep you from doing the one thing that is required to move forward. It keeps you from slowing down to focus on your own needs.
Yeah, no, I think so. It's yeah, I think that's an interest. I like those distinctions. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but I think that resonates. But it's and the poverty mindset that they're definitely in the MS community, and I think any big transformational community that's dealing with that, it's going to be a thing. It's easy to get stuck in that. Oh, this happened. This, and I hear this from people that why do you have MS? No, I don't know. It's my karma. I must have done something in a past life, something like that. I just, God only gives you what you can handle, and this is me. And it's a very, and I respect it, and I realize they're speaking from pain, so I'm not knocking that, but that's, I find like that's, if I think God hates me, that's a very limiting. It's very difficult for me to feel like I'm going to heal. It's like, who am I to say that I'm going to heal? So I didn't stay in the poverty set very long. The survival set. Um, I think this is a bit of transition for me because being a sales guy and growing up in some of the environments that I did, I was a firefighter, uh, and I'm still a very good firefighter. If you have a crisis situation, call me. I will be steady. I will figure this stuff out. Uh, I will hang in there. I can do this, and I will carry you out on my back if I have to. That as a sales guy, that was part of the deal. Going into a client, they had a fire. There was something that, and I had to be good about smelling smoke sometimes because I was selling products that they didn't know that they needed. It was new tech and next gen stuff, and so smelling smoke and learning to find that kind of stuff, I got really good at that, and then helping them find a way back out of it. I'm grateful that I had those skills, but um, but if but for me, I think part of what shifted me out of it is realizing just because I'm good at something doesn't mean that it's good for me, uh, and that was huge, and that was honestly a painful part of the identity, more so than losing the mountain biking and the hiking and the vice president of widgets and all that kind of that stuff was surprisingly easy to shed. But the idea of that I am here to save everybody around me and make and all that, and it's not that I don't care about it. I very much deeply care about it, but I had to give myself permission to heal and do that. And a friend of mine, and I found it it matters who I had around me, because if I had people that were locked in the poverty state or the survival state, and I needed, for my healing at some point, I needed to move to a higher level. It's not that I couldn't turn around and help them, and in many ways that's my goal, is to get myself strong enough that I can be go back and help people. Uh, but I think that I recognized at one point, I was the mountain biker hiker thing. there were times you were out there on the trail, and if somebody busted up their ankle or their bike or something like that, and you wanted to get them out. Sure, that was it's getting dark. It's a kind of a scary forest where we would be, uh, but it's like I can't carry you out. I can't. You can't ride the bike with me through what we have to go through. I can't. That's not going to work. I have to get out and come back. And but that but that's a difficult, painful conversation to have, both with yourself and if you're with people in that setting. Uh, and there are no guarantees that you're going to get out and find help and get back. I mean, especially if if you're hurt and doing that yourself, who's to say you're not going to get eaten by a bear long before you ever get out? That's just the reality of it. Uh, but uh, but anyway, I think for me that recognizing that sometimes it's important. It's surprising. I had a friend was a lifeguard at one point, and I was talking with him as I was going through, and he made the kind. He said, "Kick away," and I said, "What? What do you mean?" He said I was a lifeguard. He said I was trained that of course we're there to save people, but he said there's a training that you get if the person is thrashing and they're crashing and you're going to drown, they're going to drown themselves and drown you. You have to kick away. And get a little distance, let them thrash. You don't want them to drown, but let them exhaust themselves. You save your strength, and then maybe you can go back and save them. Maybe you can't, but you can't. You drowning yourself, then the whole beach is without a lifeguard. That's no good. And that was that was an interesting lesson for me to hear, and it's has stuck with me clearly. But I think that's part of what I had to go through to maybe move out of that survival mindset and try to get into something that was better. And what can I create? What's good about this? How can I rebuild? How can I heal? What can I reflect back to people that are still dealing with crisis or poverty that might help them? Uh, no, but I think that rewind and say so. I think that don't be a taker, be a giving person. I think that's so ingrained in our culture and our psyche and all that. Uh, and and it's okay. One of the things that in the crisis mode, I think that I felt at that time, it's when you're in that mode, you don't want to let yourself relax. If you feel like you're relaxing, you're letting off the gas a little bit, you're maybe not doing enough. If you're not 120% busy, if you're not that overbooked, you're not trying. And and that's and I was good at that or guilty of that, whatever adjective you want to use for it. Uh, that maxing out, going in overdrive was the space that I lived, and I kind of came to depend on it. Uh, in different settings, I realized that level of intensity and pressure was kind of critical to my process, and that if I backed off, I was always afraid that I wouldn't get back up again, that I would go off into slacker land, and not get it back somehow, like the fire was out, and that I think that can be very seductive and dangerous, and it was for me, and that you can stay there and live in that space and you feel like, oh, I'm doing everything and this is really great, and it was killing me. And I think that's one of the things that is kind of weird is as I'm in the weird position of with the roller coaster. I went all the way down. Uh, and I've had a few ups and downs. It is quite a ride and has been. But I'm in an unusual position of I spent 5 years in a wheelchair and I've been out of the wheelchair for 4 years. It's not my story is not I went in MS was bad and I was in this wheelchair and I've learned to love it. No, I was grateful for my wheelchair. It let me do things. It was a comfortable ride. I met wonderful people doing. It's a weird to say. Uh,
What Kent's story makes clear is that these mindsets are not always easy to recognize in ourselves because poverty mindset feels heavy, and we expect that when things are going off and wrong and down and up and just there's a lot to carry. When we get into that survival mindset, that can feel like strength, like we're carrying others and we're being productive and we're being dependable. And that is what makes it so easy to stay there. But as Kent shared, just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's the right place to be. The shift into the creator mindset is not about doing more. It's about slowing down enough to ask a different question. What do I need? What can I rebuild from here? And what would it look like to move forward in a way that actually sustains me? That's exactly what I wrote about in Learn to Love the Roller Coaster. It's about recognizing the mindset you're living in and understanding how it is shaping your decisions and learning how to step into something more intentional. If this conversation resonated with you, the book will take you deeper into making that shift in your own life because change is not something you go through, it's something you can learn to shape.